Well, that was really stupid. I just recorded about 10-15 minutes worth of video and then realised my microphone wasn't on or plugged in, and so it was all completely wasted. However, I have sorted it out now. Hello and welcome. I hope you're well today. I went for a walk the other day and the weather was like this. It was sort of grey skies. There was a very light mist of rain. It wasn't even particularly raining. It was just like, one of those mists that's just kind of there. It's cold and it's very light, but it's wet and the ground was wet underfoot. And at first sight, it looked like there wasn't really much pleasure to be taken from going out into the countryside for a walk, the weather the way it was. But as I was walking, I really noticed beauty everywhere that I looked. The green that was around me, because obviously at this time of year in the UK, we're May at the moment, and at this time of year we've obviously got coming sort of towards that end of spring, beginning of summer phase, so everything's really, really green because we've had plenty of rain. And so the green of everything really struck me. Seeing the woods in the distance, seeing all the lovely views around me. Where I was walking kind of out the back here is I'm surrounded by nature. I'm really, really lucky. And I just walked along a little track out the back and just followed it. I didn't know where I was going. I was just following this track. And there was open landscape all around me. So whichever direction I looked, I could see for miles. And I was just struck by the openness, the space, the beauty, the greenery, and not just that, but the fact that I was surrounded by nature and fresh air and just breathing all this lovely fresh air in and having the kind of the space and the sky around me. It was a really peaceful, calming and therapeutic moment. And as I was reflecting on this, as I was walking through the weather and the beauty and the greenery, I was reflecting on this and I was thinking to myself, yeah, sometimes it can seem as if there's something, things can be grey, things can be dull, things can be monotonous, boring, difficult even. But it's always possible to find something to appreciate in those moments. It's always possible to find some beauty. Or something to be grateful for, or something to appreciate in those moments. So that was the first thing I was reflecting on. The second thing as I was walking was that I got to a point where there was a kind of almost like a mini crossroads. There were no signs, no signposts. And I stood there and I thought, oh well, either I can go back or I can carry on down this little path. And it seemed at first as if I had these two kind of options. I could carry on going forward or I could turn around and go back. But the more I thought about this, the more I thought, actually, there's more than two options here. There's more than just two choices. I could actually choose not just to go back the way I've come or to go forward, which doesn't seem like a great choice. I could choose to stay still. I could choose to stay where I am. I could choose to breathe in the moment, take in my surroundings, sit for a while, absorb things and just sort of sit on one spot without moving, stay still. That was an option. So all of a sudden, instead of just two options, I had three options. I could either move forwards, I could move backwards, or I could stay still. And then I thought about it some more, and I realised that actually I have more than three options here. I could choose to go backwards, to stay still, or to go forwards, or I could choose to go sideways. I could choose to go left and right. Now, if I'd chosen to go right, it would have taken me across a field and in a different direction, and there would have been some obstacles, there would have been some ditches, and there would have been some hedges. If I'd chosen to go left, there would have been a much straighter route and less obstacles, but it would have been easier terrain, but it would have been a longer distance before I actually got anywhere. And I would have reached the woods in the end. I would have got to some woods and I would have been under cover of the trees. And so I could have gone in any number of different directions. And in the end, I had about 5 or 6 different choices as to what route I could take. And having identified that I had all of these different options, I could then kind of weigh up the consequences of those different choices. So if I'd have gone either left or right to either side of me, the consequences would have been, well, perhaps if I'd gone right, the consequences would have been, it would have been a harder journey. there would have been more ups and downs, there would have been more struggles, I would have got dirtier, I would have got really muddy because the ground was wet and it was muddy. And if I'd gone left, it would have taken me a lot longer. I only had about half an hour's worth of time left. And if I'd have gone left, it would have taken me longer to have got to what I thought would have been a destination, i.e. the woods. It would have taken me longer than half an hour. So I kind of discounted those two options because I didn't want to get dirty. I didn't want to have to deal with the consequences of that. Even though it might have been a more exciting route, I might have discovered more along the way, I decided I didn't want the consequences of that choice, didn't want the consequences of going right, and I chose to carry on going forwards for a bit longer because that option seemed to me to offer me some excitement because it meant I was climbing over stiles, I was going over little bridges, over ditches, I was seeing different elements of landscape. So I decided to go forward instead of going to either side and instead of going backwards at that point. And in the end, I turned around and I went back. And I was just reflecting on all of this and I was thinking that's a really good metaphor for life. Sometimes, especially if you're in the throes of an unhealthy relationship with alcohol or another drug or any kind of substance or habit that's unhealthy for you, or if you're just making that decision and starting on a journey into living life sober, sometimes it can seem as if you feel kind of trapped, as if you haven't got that many choices. And that feeling of being trapped and not having many choices can be really demotivating. And what I want to suggest to you today is that it's always possible to find at least 3 options where you think there might have been none or only 1 or maybe 2. Sometimes 2 choices can feel like a conflict. It's, well, I either do that, in which case all these bad things happen, or I do this, in which case all of these bad things happen. But when you open up and identify a 3rd option, you give yourself more choice. It suddenly starts seeming like a choice rather than a kind of conflict. And when you've identified 3 or more choices or options, you then can start weighing up the pros and cons of each, the consequences of each. And that, of course, gives you more control because you're suddenly controlling the options around you. You're suddenly controlling your destination. Like I was on this walk, instead of just feeling, oh, well, I can either keep going forwards or I can go back, I suddenly had a lot more choice. And having that choice made me feel more in control and have more confidence about the direction I was going in. And it's exactly the same in life. And it's also important to remember that when you're feeling stuck or you're feeling trapped or you feel like you don't have many options, one option, to introduce a 3rd option into the equation, can be simply to choose to do nothing differently. That can be one option. Standing still, sitting still, staying still, doing nothing can be an option. And as soon as you've opened up 3 options, you can suddenly start to feel like you have some choice in things. And that's when you can weigh up the consequences and decide which option, which choice is going to have the better or the best outcome for you. So the point I really want to get across today is that sometimes when we're feeling stuck, when we feel like we don't have many options, just a short time of reflection and thought can open up new possibilities. And when you open up new possibilities, you can take more control. And it's in that taking control, identifying consequences, taking control of the direction you want to go in, that you gain confidence. If you want more encouragement and inspiration on stopping drinking and living life happily and healthily sober, subscribe to my channel. I'll look forward to catching up with you very soon, but in the meantime, let's go get sober together.